So I'm here at FreedomFest doing a bunch of interviews and having great conversations with people about respect and ethics and values. And I'm very lucky today. I have with me Dan McKnight from Bring Our Troops Home. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do.
Certainly. We're a veterans organization that's made up mostly of veterans of the global war on terror. Most of us served in Afghanistan or Iraq or Yemen or Syria or Africa or anywhere in the Middle East. And we
Semper Fi?
Thank you, Semper Fi. Most of us came home and decided that the mission there was undefined, and we started trying to figure out why. And we realized that Congress has let us down, and they've abdicated their responsibility in matters of war and allowed a single person, a president, whether Republican or Democrat, to take us to war unilaterally. And without the oversight from Congress and the accountability by the people, these wars have gotten out of hand. And we saw Afghanistan go over 20 years, and the war in Syria right now is about to become the longest war in U.S. history.
Yep.
And we're fighting in 27 nations across the African continent that American people don't even know about.
100%.
And it's all because our representatives, our voice in Washington, D.C. has literally given away their authority. And so we're trying to bridge the divide by being respectful, by being positive, by bringing people from both the left and the right together who believe in the Constitution, who believe in the value of human life.
Sure.
And we framed our argument in such a way that we're different from the Haight-Ashbury counterculturist hippies from the 1970s. We love those guys. But we're trying to be more of a voice of people who have skin in the game, and that we were there, we bled, and let's have a respectful dialogue, and let's get back to a center point.
I love that. I have a trivia question for you.
Let's hear it.
Do you happen to know when the last time the United States declared war?
I certainly do. Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria in World War II.
Absolutely, 1942.
1942.
Absolutely,
That's a great question.
Most people don't know that.
80 years.
That's correct. We haven't declared war since World War II.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've been at war for how many years now?
Every year since.
There we go, yes. Absolutely.
And Eisenhower warned us against that when we left World War II. He said, if we join this alliance, this NATO alliance, we're going to be at war without a declaration of war from now until forever.
He's kind of right.
He is right.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess what I'm going to talk to you about today is I'm not trying to make you more liberal or conservative, right? As I know your organization doesn't care about that anyway.
Nope.
So, but I want to talk about the ideas of, and I'll show you if I have my my piece here. We're talking about almost a chart that shows like some people are more conservative, some more progressive.
Yep.
But also, when is it okay to use coercion? When is it okay to use persuasion? What should you be doing, and when is it okay? So I think that most people would agree that we all want to be happy. And most people would agree, I would think, that if someone is to somehow hurt you, physically hurt you, try to physically punch you, whatever the case may be, that if that happens to you, you're going to be less happy.
It's fact.
Right? I think everybody would agree with that. And the second piece, if someone is to either take your stuff or vandalize your stuff, either through theft or through defrauding you, something like that, you're going to be less happy.
It's a fact.
And I think that it's not just us who think that way, right? And we're here, right? So obviously we think that. But would you say everybody thinks that?
No.
Okay.
And let me explain why. I think that some people have a value of life, liberty, and property that other people don't.
Okay.
And I believe that as creations of a higher power, whether it's a God or an Allah or a Yahweh or whoever you represent as that higher power, we're creations of a higher power that bestowed upon us certain rights. The right to health, freedom, life, liberty, property, happiness. And when somebody encroaches on that, I think we have a duty, not an obligation, not a right, but a duty to protect our right to exist in our own world, in our own happiness, in our own, but at the same time, so does everybody else.
Sure.
I don't have the right to infringe my belief, my system, my values on somebody else either. And so I take this really strong approach that you do you, I'm going to do me. As long as we don't hurt each other, we can be best friends, we can be neighbors, we can exist in the same sphere.
So if I understand right, you're saying that people want happiness for themselves, but they may not want happiness for others.
That's fair. Everybody hates tyranny unless it's their own tyranny. Right?
Okay, right.
So
sure.
you see Republicans, when they gain power, they exercise and flaunt and flex on the other side. And when the Democrats take power, they do the same thing.
Right.
But I think if everybody would stop and just take a step back, take that breath, and recognize that the person you're negotiating with or battling is a human being.
Right.
And have that mutual respect and that understanding. And that's why we have a constitution. It's kind of a playbook.
It is.
And if we all follow and adhere to it, it takes away the need to be combative. It takes away the need to be tribal. And it just simply says that these are your rights and the government is here to protect those rights. and we, the people, are going to give the government back every other power that they have. And as long as we understand that, I think we can all coexist.
So the concept of human respect and happiness, you would say, is universal for the individual, but not necessarily when you're looking outward.
That's fair.
Okay,
That's
so
fair.
so when it comes to individually, that's kind of a principle.
Sure.
Right? That if we have more human respect, then we're going to have more happiness, more harmony, more prosperity.
I agree.
And we would hope that maybe the people we love, at least, would have that too. Even if we don't want the other guy.
Right.
Right. But these people we love, we'd want that.
Sure, that's fair.
Okay, good. So let me ask you: Is there someone who you might say, or some time, where that's kind of an exception? Meaning, is it okay, say, for the GOP, as an example, to decide who people should marry or can or cannot marry? Is that maybe something they could do that would be okay because they're trying to help society or help others? Is that an exception?
So that's a great philosophical question, and here's my answer to that: yes, and here's why. The GOP is a private organization, just as the Democratic Party is a private organization. People have joined those organizations based on a litmus test, if you will, a platform.
Yep.
And they've all agreed with that platform.
Yep.
And they should live within that guideline, those principles within themselves.
So people in the GOP should absolutely do that.
They should not force it on anybody else.
Oh,
there's the question. There's the
when the GOP in this fictitious case takes over,
right,
which might happen soon.
Sure.
If that happens, would it then be okay because we voted? Right. In this case, we've all voted, right? So if we as Americans have voted, and we put the GOP in power, and the GOP says, "Hey, we're now going to decide who you can love and who you can marry and who you can't," would that be okay? Because they're trying, clearly, people who believe that's right for society, that's better for us, that's helping people. Not because they're mean, they think it's the right answer. Is that okay then?
That is a majority rule mob mentality, in my opinion.
Okay.
And so my answer is going to be a little bit two-part, yes and no. And the reason I say yes is because when you win, you feel you have a moral obligation to not only your supporters, but to society as a whole. And that's what the great experiment of America is. It's this giant pendulum that swings from left to right. And it swings, and the swing is getting bigger and wider every time there's a change in power. But eventually, over time, I feel like the pendulum does rest somewhere pretty close in the middle.
Okay.
And so there may be a time of turmoil for the right, there may be a time of turmoil for the left, but ultimately over time I feel like America is progressing in the right direction, and that the rights of humans are generally respected throughout the last 2 years with COVID, of course. But generally over time, I think you would see a general rise in individual freedom and liberty throughout America.
So then what you're saying then is if it's a temporary thing, so if the GOP takes over and it's temporary and they would make these rules, it would be okay because after a couple of years, it'll swing back and we'll be okay. It'll be more towards the middle.
I would say no on this, and here's why. Again, I like to be able to define this. Each party obviously thinks that their vision, their morals, their platform is that center line. Sure. We all believe that. So I would call myself a conservative, liberty-minded Republican. So I'm registered in the Republican Party. I don't hide that. But I consider myself also a bridge builder between the moderate establishment and between friends that enjoy liberty and freedom on the left. Sure. And so as long as your platform it's your moral guide, I can see why a party would want to force that on the other side. Now, that's where the great classical liberalism comes into play, that we believe in limited government. We believe in small regulations. We believe in the absence of government in our life as to the greatest extent possible. And if we can get to that point, again, you would be able to live your life, I would be able to live my life, and we can live in harmony. So then, but if we go that route, can't we go the opposite too? Can't we say that if the Democrats are in charge, and they were for a while, and they say, hey, we should take all the guns away because that's going to hurt people, right? Would that be okay for 2 years? Because eventually we would come back, right? And at that point, if the Democrats taking everybody's guns away, they're saying the same thing. They're going, well, no, this is to help people, right? As a GOP might say, hey, it's okay to help people when we're limiting marriage. The Democrats might go, oh, it's okay because we're just limiting guns. Or still no. I mean, both are going to think they're right. The Democrats are going to believe they're right when they do this. They think they're right, and the Republicans think they're right, but I think that what is right is what is laid out in our Bill of Rights. I think what is right is what's laid out in what I would call general human instinct for freedom and prosperity and happiness. And I don't believe that restricting somebody's rights based on a philosophy is a guide or a line that leads us back to that center line of liberty and freedom.
So if I'm hearing you right, while you can understand why a left or right group would want to impose their will, you still feel that there really is no exception. They should not impose their will.
No, not really. So I don't think they should impose their will. They should impose a set of principles and guidelines that reflects human desire for freedom, liberty, and happiness. And I don't believe that a certain party's platform that wants to talk about restriction of guns or restriction of movement or restriction of ownership of property, that is not in line with the principles that we all believe are inherited from our Creator. And so when a party wants to take away those liberties, take away those freedoms, I don't believe that's right, even though the pendulum will eventually swing back. That's a battle that a generation of people shouldn't have to have.
Got it.
I shouldn't have to fight for my children's liberties and sacrifice my own. I should be fighting to preserve my liberties so that it can be passed on to another generation.
Got it. Okay. So I think, even though you're not that concerned because you feel the pendulum goes back and forth, you still think it's wrong. You still think it's wrong no matter what.
Absolutely.
Got it. So again, we're going back to this idea of you can respect someone for believing that, hey, we shouldn't have guns, or hey, we should decide who gets married. But that's just you do you and I do me.
And don't
still
interfere. I believe in that, yes. But at the same time, I think that society has an obligation to protect a certain set of values, a certain minimum standard where fairness, equality, happiness, pursuit of property and liberty, those things have to be protected. They have to be. And there are some regulations and some desires and some platform issues that are just a bridge too far to span. For anybody that really truly understands liberty and freedom, you can't give away a freedom expecting to win it back eventually. Because maybe once it's gone, it's gone.
That might be the end.
It might be the end.
Yeah, I think we see that often.
Absolutely.
I think we see that often. And the saddest part, I would say, is I think, with some exceptions, most of the time, Americans don't have their rights just taken. We vote them away.
We absolutely do. We give them away because we're lazy. Yep, lazy and uninformed.
Uninformed too? Sure. I think both of those things. So if we were to try to start having more conversations, the problem I see is when I have a conversation and I talk about, say, either things about marriage equality or gun rights, someone's going to hear me say one of those things, assume I'm the enemy,
right,
and not want to hear what I have to say.
That's fact.
So if I say, hey, what about marriage equality? Oh, you're a liberal and I don't want to talk to you. Or what about gun rights? Oh, you're a conservative, I don't want to talk to you. That's going to happen almost automatically, right? Is the idea of discussing a philosophy of human respect, which talks about happiness, harmony, prosperity, is that a better way to make that conversation happen? And I'm biased, I obviously believe that, but I'm curious if you do.
I think so. And we're watching again, I'm a member of the GOP. We're watching the GOP go through this massive divide and split and tribalism and factions between liberty and establishment, just to put labels on them.
100%.
And we're finding that the most effective legislators, the most effective activists in the entire GOP are those that can bridge that divide and say, look, we agree 99% of the time. What we disagree on is the soapbox.
Right.
You want to stand up and thump your chest, and you want to stand up and pass milquetoast legislation, but we agree on the end result. So a clear definition, understanding the true meaning of words,
right,
putting a value on a word and making it mean what we're saying it means, is a way for a divided party, even the liberals and the moderate Democrats, to go through the same divide. As long as they understand that they can get going in the same direction, all pushing the wheel in the same direction, I believe that respect, that harmony can coexist. And it is a tough bridge to build, and we are definitely in such a divisive and hyper-focused society with a 12-hour news cycle at best. Yes. That people they want to fight every fight, and they want to treat everyone as the hill that they're going to die on.
Yes, and they spend more time virtue signaling than actually doing something.
Yep, the woke culture and what is it called? Stakeholder capitalism is destroying America.
Absolutely, yes, yes, and yes. I hear you. So I guess in the long run, we're saying that government coercion is never going to be the right thing.
Correct.
And that we want individual groups like the GOP or like the Democratic Party or whatever local civic group, whatever it might be, that they should establish their own values, their own ideals, and people should voluntarily join them.
Absolutely.
And that persuasion is much more of a better way than coercion.
Absolutely. And the ballot should be open to anybody from any party, from any identity that wants to run, because it gives people the actual choice, the actual freedom to select somebody that represents their values.
They can always just not vote for them.
That would be the easiest option.
Yes.
It requires absolutely no legislation.
That's correct.
Yep.
They can just not vote for them.
Right.
It's kind of that easy.
Yep.
I completely agree. That's great. I love that. So I guess what I'm wrapping this up, it is saying that human respect is a principle that makes people happier, more harmonious, more prosperous,
Sure.
and that governments and even local communities should be looking at ways of moving their agenda forward, always with human respect as in the forefront.
Sure. And I'll tell you that I think that the absolute destruction of the American society began with, and you're going to laugh at me when I say this, the push button garage door opener.
Okay.
And let me tell you why. You go home from work, what do? Push the button, you drive in your garage, you push the button, you close it. You never talk to your neighbors. You don't have conversations. You don't have civility. You go to work, to a job you probably don't like.
Right.
You work, you're angry, you come home, you push that button, you go in your house, you turn on TV, and the first thing on is CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News.
Right.
And you put yourself in a camp and you go down that primrose path. Get out of your car, pick up your trash cans, talk to your neighbor, find out who they are as a human being.
Right.
Not by the flag they fly in their yard, not by the type of car they have.
Right.
But truly meet your neighbor and develop and rely on those interpersonal human skills. And kids aren't learning them today because what do they do? They text, they Snapchat, they Instagram. I've had more kids, I have young teenage sons, their friends will cancel plans with them without ever a phone call, just a simple text.
Right.
There's no accountability. There's no interpersonal connection. And then they'll come to the house and they'll swim in the pool and they'll all sit there on their phones.
Yes, they'll be in the same room, texting
each other.
Yes, absolutely.
And so
yes.
the push button garage door opener, I think, was the beginning of that. That was our Snapchat.
That's it. So that's the point where we stopped having the deep conversations.
Amen. Yep.
And at that point, we stopped treating people. It's a dehumanization of the person next door.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Great. Wow. Such a great conversation.
Well, thank you. It was
Thank you so
enjoyable.
much for having me. I
Well, Larry,
appreciate it.
thank you. That
Good
was
seeing
fun.
you.
You too.
Thanks.
It's good seeing you again.